back with shadowing. And in this video, I want to continue our discussion of shadowing and talk about how to shadow and what things to do, what clips to choose, or what audio files, what content to shadow after. So how to shadow? I think that the first thing to understand is that shadowing requires a certain level of fluency. You can shadow right from the very beginning, but I don't feel that it's very helpful, except maybe to help you get a basic understanding of what the language is about. Because you're pretty much just repeating sounds, and you're not sure if these sounds really are even words. But once your vocabulary grows, and once you have a really good understanding of the structures in the language, then shadowing becomes more useful. Because then you can start thinking about improving things like your ability to, comprehend. Because once you are able to repeat dialogue, I feel like you can actually understand it better than if you just listen passively. And once you're at a level that's high enough, you can actually improve your stress and intonation and your accent, things like that. Specifically, I'm actually talking about reading fluency. You need to have at least enough reading fluency to be able to catch up with the speed at which people are talking in a video. So as you can guess, I would recommend that you work with subtitled video clips if you have them. If you're working with audio, that you have a transcript at the very least. It's better to have subtitles and no subtitles, because if you don't have subtitles, then this really isn't shadowing unless you are confident enough in your listening abilities. It becomes a listening and repeating activity. And listening and repeating is hard, because sometimes you listen and there's a good possibility that you're going to be wrong in a foreign language. And the higher you go, the lower the chances of that. But listening is not easy in the beginning, especially when you're working with authentic material, right? And on the subject, should you use like beginner's materials, or should you use authentic material? Well, the authentic material is hard. So you can simply repeat after beginner's materials. I know that Glossica is a great course to start out with, and you listen and you repeat. And that's shadowing in the beginning at a more beginning level. And again, that's useful, and you will see the utility of shadowing the more you progress in terms of level in that language. Again, it's really not that easy to listen without subtitles, without script of some sort. It requires a lot of concentration and a fairly decent ability in listening comprehension in that language, which requires a fairly large vocabulary. And so I'll say that shadowing is something that you should think about, at the very least, revisiting at every stage of the learning journey. Because as we talked about in the previous video, there are many different reasons to shadow. And some of them would just be to reinforce your understanding of the language, the sound system. But others involve that you kind of have a certain level of fluency in order for that reason to be valid. For example, stress and intonation. You can't really talk about stress and intonation in the beginning when you are still putting phrases together and working around the structures of the language, right? So it really helps to revisit shadowing, and it will it'll be very helpful, I think, to improving your spoken, your discourse. And it is not a one-off thing, built upon that idea. Okay. So next I want to talk a little bit about what to shadow. 6 things to consider. Number 1, they should be things of interest to you, obviously. If it's not interesting, then it will feel dreary. Number 2, hopefully something not too difficult as well. The more difficult it is, the higher your language proficiency has to be, and it just doesn't help, any of the objectives that we talked about in the beginning. Number 3, things you're likely to use. For example, if you are an artist, hopefully you will choose things that are related to art, things that you're likely to use. Number 4, because you'll have a stronger resonance with it, and that will help reinforce these things even more. You want to model after someone you want to sound like, right? It could be a particular profession, a particular personality of person. It doesn't matter, but think about that. I think that could be that can have long-lasting impacts in your language learning. And number 5, gender. I always tend to pick females in the beginning, because females always speak clearly, more clearly than males. And it's really hard because males, we tend to slur and all that kind of good stuff. So regardless of whether you're male or female, I recommend shadowing after female speakers first. And number 6, it's best if you can actually visually see the mouth move. That's how you can really connect the sounds with what you hear, right? I will also demonstrate shadowing for you to see, but not in Cantonese. I'm not so sure if that's helpful. Not in Cantonese only. I am going to do so for the languages I know and languages I don't. Class 1 languages, completely unfamiliar. I don't know them at all, so that includes German and Russian. I'm going to be using these two. Class 2, somewhat familiar, at a stage where you're kind of, you understand the structures and you have some decent vocabulary. And this is, again, all to show you guys what your shadowing will feel like at different stages of the game. And these languages for me would be Korean and Spanish. And number 3, fairly familiar, larger vocabulary, and much more familiarity with constructs. So those for me would be French and Japanese. And then close to mastery, that for me would be English and Mandarin, maybe doing a couple of accents there. And number 5, native, and that will be Cantonese. I'm not so sure if it will be helpful to see a native speaker model after his native language, but there we go. Alright, and that's about it for this time. As usual, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. And I will see you guys in a separate video. Alright, thank you so much for the viewership, guys. I really appreciate it. See you guys next time. Cheers.